Disclaimer: the following program features language not suitable for all audiences, and the expressed opinions found within this program are a reflection of those who feature on the PopCulture Effect podcast. Welcome to the PopCulture Effect. I'm Rockin Rob, and on this show I bring my closest friends together to talk about all of the news happening in our pop culture world around us.
Heyo, I'm Subset. I'm here with my two lovely friends, Gemini.
Hello.
And Menace.
Hello.
Today we have interesting topics to go through, I feel like.
This week I'll be pulling double duty, and later on I'll be talking about the Season 7 series finale of Young Sheldon. But before that, I thought I'd take a few moments to discuss X-Men 97 and its Season 1 wrap-up. Now that its Season 1 is finally wrapped up, I want to take a few minutes to show some respect to this incredible sequel to a previous incarnation. Now, this first season brought together a lot of story beats from the best comics in X-Men, from the official confirmation of Apocalypse at the Season 1 finale, to the crossovers from Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, and to the speculation from the internet that Onslaught, or the combination of Charles Xavier and Magneto, is going to be making an appearance, which I am incredibly excited for. And going back to those crossovers real quick, I'm really hopeful that there will be some kind of Avengers 97 show coming out where we actually get to see these other heroes and what they're dealing with at the time. And I just really hope we get some of these elements and some of these characters and some of these stories back into the Disney Plus rotation, because it'll definitely draw more people towards it. But going back to X-Men 97, this season really showed off some great animation, some great character moments, and probably the single most iconic comic panel aside from Peter Parker giving up the suit, and that is Wolverine having his adamantium ripped out of his body by Magneto. I'm so hyped to see what will happen for Season 2, and what will happen with Magneto, and what will happen with Apocalypse, and especially what will happen with Gambit, with the online speculation, with him dying and him potentially coming back as a Horseman of Death. I'm excited to see what will happen with Wolverine. Maybe he'll go feral, what will happen with Rogue and Storm and all the other X-Men, and I just cannot wait to see the next kind of stage of X-Men 97. But that's been my smaller segment on this really popular show, and now it is time to head back for the rest of the episode.
We got a new Lord of the Rings movie coming out?
Yeah, so I found this article where apparently in 2026 of next year, the guy who had done the original Lord of the Rings movies, not the Rankin Bass animations from the 80s, even though those are pretty good. It's produced by Peter Jackson, which I'm pretty sure he did the first ones, right? Yeah, I'm 95% sure. Let me just... Yeah, okay, so it was produced by Peter Jackson, the original Lord of the Rings movies back in the early 2000s, okay. And then when they did The Hobbit and such. So It will be produced by the same guy. In 2026, they're going to be releasing a new Lord of the Rings movie called The Hunt for Golum, which I'm not too sure how to really feel about this, just due to the fact that, yeah, I understand that Golum is kind of like a prominent character in the franchise. You know, you see his beginnings, not necessarily like his full-on beginnings, like that is explained, but like you first chronologically see him in The Hobbit, you know, him and Bilbo are like duking it out in the caves or whatever, telling each other riddles of what's in the pockets kind of shit. And then, you know, he is pretty much with, you know, he is the one who leads them to, spoilers by the way if you haven't seen the movies or read the books, which I haven't read the books either, so it's probably a little bit different.
It's over 20 years old.
I was gonna say, if you haven't seen it yet, either you're a like troglodyte who lives in a basement, or you're a child. And if you're a child and you still haven't seen them, then you need better parents.
Watch them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Either way, go watch them now if you haven't, or at the very least look into it. Like if you don't have the time to watch it, then look up Spark Notes or whatever. I don't care. But you know, he pretty much.
I know there is not to cut you off.
Okay.
I know there is the whole, they shown some backstory in the old, like there's the backstory for the books of Golum, and then they showed the flashback scenes in the movies.
Yeah, like they explained Gollum's backstory in the movies. He was a hobbit who got corrupted by the ring. You know,
Yeah.
they explained his life already, but
I just hope that this doesn't go as bad as the Golum game that just came out.
that's what I was trying to get at, because like I understand he is a rather, I don't want to say pivotal, but he is a very important side character for just in general the plot of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which, you know, in tandem together, you know, as I stated, he was the one who was doing the old scrap-a-dap with Bilbo, and then in The Lord of the Rings, he is the one who leads them to Mordor and everything, and, you know, leading Frodo and his Giga Chad best friend ever.
Simping for Samwise over here.
Yeah, Samwise. No, it's just because, dude, Samwise is like the biggest Giga Chad ever. This dude literally is like a homie to the end. Literally is willing to carry. Yeah, he's a ride or die homie. He goes home, he marries a woman, and he gets that hobbit. He gets that I'm letting the motorcycle go by.
We know where you're going.
Yeah, he goes home and he gets that hobbit, and he pops out like 13 kids. But anyway.
Oh my god.
So it's still in the early stages of script development, being released by Warner Brothers, which I'm pretty sure, were they the ones that released the first one?
I really just closed the tab. I'm not even
know. New Line Cinema, whoever that is. It's okay. So basically, it's the same people because they all got fingers in each other's pies. But
yeah.
Warner Brothers is re-releasing its first new batch of live-action Lord of the Rings films in 2026, which will focus on Andy Serkis's Golum. As I stated, it is still currently in the early stages of script development, so they don't have much to really say, just due to the fact that, you know, they're still working on the script, but it will be bringing back the guy who originally did play as Golum, which is Sir Andy Serkis himself.
Are they gonna go from like start to finish of his life, like when he was a hobbit before and what he was doing? And
I don't know.
Because I can see that, and that sounds interesting.
I think that could be, because here's the thing, like if it's going to be like a hunt for Gollum in a sense of like what happened afterwards, homie literally fell in the fire. Like he fell in the volcano. He's dead.
He somehow got survived.
Yeah, like did he somehow pull like I don't know, like some kind of shit where he's just like, I'm actually alive, and he looks like some weird ass like burn victim unit patient? I don't know. Like apparently a while ago there was a fan movie that was made called The Hunt for Gollum. I don't know anything about it. I probably should have researched it, but it was a fan movie and everything. So I don't know if they're going to be taking inspiration of that. If they do, they really should credit the individual, even if it is a fan product. You know, it's still a little like, I don't know. That's where shit.
It's an odd choice.
It's an odd choice, and I understand that can be a very big gray area when it comes to that, because in technicality, it isn't their original IP that they are making content of, but at the same time, it's like, it's still something that someone else put in effort to make, and you're still technically stealing someone else's creativity, even if the base content isn't something that they themselves had created. That's such a gray topic. Quick side tangent. I do hate that can be a very gray area, because it's something that a lot of companies love to abuse. One of the biggest culprits of that is actually like Hot Topic t-shirts. They are very notorious for stealing fan art and slapping it on their t-shirts just due to the fact that they know that they can get away with it due to its fan art. You know, you can't really fight fan art because, you know, a fan art piece of Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever, that's the first thing I could think of, slapped on a Hot Topic t-shirt. You know, Sonic doesn't belong to Twitter user, I almost said like something really like triple X there because of Twitter, like, you know, Twitter user I love Sonic XD or whatever. They can't fight that because they're not the creator of Sonic. I don't know who the fucking creator of Sonic is, but like still Sega, yeah. So like it's such a gray area, but it's still a shitty thing to do regardless. But they haven't stated that that's the case. It's just got a similar name, and if it's a similar name, like that's whatever. But they don't have much really saying about it. But they did release a little bit of like some other information back last year in February of 2020. 2023, some newly installed studio leaders Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi brokered a deal to make multiple films based off of J.R. Tolkien books. And there are a lot more books that are in the Lord of the Rings universe that never were made into movies. There's one that's, I think it's just a collection of short stories. There's like the Cimmerian.
We can get the Merry and Pippin series.
Oh my god, wait, there's a Merry and Pippin series? I'd read
If
that.
I remember
I'd watch
correctly.
That. Let me look up like all his actual books, because he has written a lot that they didn't make into movies. You know, the Silmarillion, the Cimarron
story.
Tom Bombadil.
There's a whole story of the elves. If I remember correctly, from what I've seen for the,
I think that's the Silmarillion.
Wait, aren't they coming out with like a show too?
That's what I was about to get into, that because in December 13th of this year, I think it is Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah, that's with Sauron and the elves. And they changed how Sauron looks from the books.
Oh, did they? That's kind of shit.
They gave him blonde hair when Sauron was meant to be like this brunette, dark, edgy elf guy. Kinda.
Oh, interesting. But yeah, that is dropping this year, December 13th. It will basically, it's as Menace had stated, it's, the War of Rohirrim tells the story of Helm Hammerhead, the King of Rohan, as they defend against Dunlendings. But yeah, it's set like 200 years before the Lord of the Rings story, or the Hobbit, essentially. The Hobbit first, because that happened first. But, they do say that they want to make a lot of his other books into movies, which, more than likely will be...
I want them to take, just a starter series, even if it's this, with the elves and stuff, and just go from there to the start of Lord of the Rings, and just have a continuous series that is well made, you follow the source material, and be the show to set the standard for these shows that have been we're gonna make it off this game, we're gonna make it off this book, and then we're not even gonna read the source material, we're not even gonna play the source material. What's a Halo?
I think one that could be a pretty interesting movie, just due to the fact that he never appeared in the movies, but he's a pretty titular character in the books, I'm pretty sure, is Tom Bombadil. And there is a book called The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. That'd probably be an interesting one to have be made into a movies, because he's if I recall correctly, I've never read the books. I'm going off of what I've been told by people who are more into the series, that he's kind of like a enigma character that is kind of implied to be almost deity-esque, but he's just he's kind of the equivalent of a godly character that is you know what, I could just be any other type of immortal creature, but I'm just gonna be a goofy old man. I think he was
around with mortals for a minute.
Yeah, I think he was kind of the grandfather of that character archetype of, godly being who's you know what, I'm kind of just gonna around instead, use my powers and just kind of be I'll help, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to snap my fingers and make everything better. I'm gonna do a little squirrel dance to make the party happy, and then they're gonna do a lot better because I did a little squirrel dance, because I'm God. Yeah,
it makes me happy.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. But there's a lot of books that he did end up writing that were never made into movies, and from what this article says is they want to make more movies based off of the books. And I don't know, on one hand, I understand that Lord of the Rings is considered one of the most popular, prominent pieces of nerd subculture in general. It's what it's the main thing. It's the main thing you think of when you think of the fantasy setting and series, just fantasy in general. You first think of Lord of the Rings. So I understand that it's never going to die. It's going to be a series, a franchise, a fandom, a group of or a subsection of pop culture that will never die. It is timeless. It is ageless. However, I think what keeps it that way is just the fact of it's solid, it's good, and I think it's just kind of one of those. It's like a bottle of wine almost. I don't think you should touch it. You should just let it sit there and let it age. If you fiddle with it, you're gonna end up messing with the integrity of it, and you're gonna just end up making it sour and shitty. It's gonna spoil. It's gonna rot. And I honestly, I like Lord of the Rings, but I don't know how to feel about this hunt for Golum, because I feel again, they're fiddling with the bottle of wine and it's gonna end up spoiling. They're gonna end up rotting it.
I feel like Gollum's a weird choice, but I am excited because the Lord of the Rings world is almost as vast as like Star Wars in regards.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's one of the top.
So,
because you have like Lord of the Rings for fantasy and Star Wars for sci-fi.
Yeah. So you have this mass world. I want to see them go out and do the character. Like I want to see, like I said, a series or like a cinematic universe for this fantasy genre that people have been begging for so long.
And like that's why at one point I had talked about the game that I thought was coming out at the time, but apparently it was just when they were going to give more information. They're keeping a little tight-lipped on that, but Tales of the Shire, because that is, it's a game that's set in the Lord of the Rings universe, but it doesn't focus on a lot of the dark nitty-gritty shit. You just play as a little hobbit and everything, and it's
also
cute.
Also, we were completely off about the arts.
I
like how like 2 days after our episode goes up from that, the gameplay trailer drops, and we were so wrong on everything we were talking about.
I mean, we were theorizing because they didn't have any information, but with this Golum movie, the main thing that they've stated is that like it's going to focus on Golum. Andy Serkis is going to be returning as his role as Golum. It's going to be, they plan it to be an epic adventure, but I'm still kind of apprehensive about it. I don't know. You'd think I chose this
if it is like Gollum when he's a hobbit in his adventure with the ring, I can see them saying that because there is a lot of, at least from what I've heard, I haven't read the books or anything either, but there is a lot of material on just Gollum himself, and he was like one of the well-known, like he had the ring for one of the longest time periods.
Yeah, it pretty much, I think because he's actually, I'm pretty sure he's like pretty old, so it extended his life. Apparently, I'm doing just a little bit more research I think it is meant to be a prequel, which, as you stated, if that is the fact, I think a more in-depth backstory could be interesting, but then at the same time, you run into the biggest thing that can kill the enjoyment of fans, and that's retconning. If they end up retconning some things, and then that's going to make a lot of long-time fans, because again, this is one of the oldest franchises for the fantasy subgenre, you're going to end up pissing off a lot of old-time fans of the fact that you just retconned and destroyed a good portion of this pretty titular character's backstory, and that's something that ends up killing a lot of these.
That one's on the studio.
Yeah, and it's just, that's why I said, you think I picked this topic because I'm excited for it, when in reality, I just want to bitch.
You gotta always come into these things, especially when it's like an old franchise that's picking up traction again. Like obviously, Lord of the Rings has always been around. There's always the big fan base. But like new content coming out for it is more of what I should say.
And I understand wanting to make new content to try and keep it fresh and alive. I get that thought process. But at the same time,
it's not also new content because it's Gollum again.
Yeah, it's not new content. Because again, if his backstory was never explained in the movies, then I could understand this being a good choice, a good backstory, like a prequel backstory.
It was. I would say it's glossed over in the movies. It's not really like.
Yeah, it was glossed over, but they stated what happened. He was one of the, I think, river folk hobbit. Him and his brother were out fishing. They found the ring. It quickly corrupted them. He killed his brother for it, and then he just spiraled into corrupted madness. It gave a cut and dry backstory for why he was like that. I mean, if they want to explain what he was like before he found the ring, then that'd be interesting.
He was kind of a bag beforehand too.
He was, but he wasn't as much of how he was now. Smeagol was his hobbit name. His hobbit name. I had a joke for it, but I already forgot.
But yeah, I'm interested, but like I said, grain of salt, cautious optimism. Always a good thing.
I didn't watch the Amazon Ring of Power show, but I did hear that it wasn't the greatest prequel-esque series that had been made about Lord of the Rings. I heard it was a little on the stinky side.
And this, at least with what they've shown for this new show coming out, it doesn't look like it's receiving well either. The
War of Rohirrim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any. Is War of Rohirrim meant to be? Oh, it's an anime.
Oh, that's not the show I was thinking of though.
Yeah, it says the War of Rohirrim. Well, I don't know. I don't think they're releasing much. Again, they like to keep a lot of this shit under wraps, but I get it. Well, it did say it's being. Where was it? Released by Warner Brothers and directed by Kenji Kamiyama, which again, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be an anime, but the one little image I clicked did say anime, so who knows? Who knows what it's gonna be? But yeah, pretty much, sometime next year. They haven't released a date, just a year of next year. We should be getting another Lord of the Rings movie, and from how it sounds like, Warner Brothers is gonna be planning on pumping out some more Lord of the Rings content in the future. I'm apprehensive about it, just due to the fact that, as I stated with my analogy, a lot of times you're just better off leaving that bottle of wine to just sit and age rather than fiddling with it. And that is totally not a analogy I use because of my job.
No, definitely not.
No, definitely not. It's not like I do that for a living.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm a sommelier. Didn't you know? I'm not.
What you call me?
Gosh, stop.
I'm not a
Get
sommelier.
your fancy words out of you.
I barely graduated high school. What the f*** do you think?
Same here. Sommelier. What is it?
Well,
A wine steward, if you will.
I think Bobbert's got...
But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Lord of the Rings and their new brewing, steaming piles of horse shit that they're working on. Their
It'd be
orc
great
shit.
coming from a non-Lord of the Rings fan here.
A golden turd is still a turd.
The orc
Remember
shit
that,
will
folks.
either be steaming or it will be polished. We shall see. And I don't mean that in the sense of I hate it. It's just I hate the franchise. It's more of just I have very low expectations. Very low expectations.
I'd rather have low expectations and it blow my mind than have high expectations and be disappointed.
Exactly. That's kind of one of the reasons why I have low expectations. I'm not going to this being oh, yeah, I can't wait for this to be a banging ass movie. It's going to be great. And then, it's just a steaming smear of orc shit. Nah. I'm going in this thinking it's going to be a pile of shit.
But there is one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is the fact that Young Sheldon has come to an end. Season 7 just wrapped up, and it was a heartfelt season because the ending saw what many of us were hoping to see and looking forward to see. We finally got to see the main point that drove Sheldon to move to start him on the journey that turned into Big Bang Theory, and that is his father, George's death. And before I get into that, I just want to talk about a few moments that I really appreciated across the show. Regardless of how polarizing this franchise as a whole has become, there's still been some good moments. Being Sheldon giving his dad advice on how to win a football game, Sheldon building a rocket, a nuclear reactor, disassembling a fridge, him getting into Caltech and proving zero isn't real to the professors, with one of them actually being Wallace Shawn of Toy Story and Princess Bride fame, and of course, Sheldon going to Germany to study but being brought home due to his mom. And the most important moment, and no, I'm not talking about Georgie and Mima starting a gambling casino ring in the back of the laundromat, but I'm talking about when Sheldon was able to remember Mima's famous brisket recipe. And the rise of Georgie and Mandy's characters were phenomenal in the show. Mima by far was the best character in the entire show, and we also got to see Sheldon's mom and dad interacting with the lives of the townfolk, with George being the gym teacher at the school and Mary being a devout Christian at the church. And the finale was a beautiful episode that showed just how big of an effect George's death had on Sheldon. And we got to see the last moments of George spending time with his family before police showed up at their front door to give them the bad news. And I know this is a somber note, but it was truly beautiful. The funeral scene was absolutely beautiful. Sheldon recollecting on what he could have said or what he could have done with his father in the last moments of his life were really hard-hitting. And there's this beautiful segment of old Sheldon taking in his whole childhood house one last time, ensuring he'll remember it for the rest of his life. Young Sheldon is an absolute great prequel to Big Bang Theory, and I know there's going to be plenty more coming to this franchise, like Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, and I'm sure we'll see other aspects of what old Georgie had to go through after Sheldon left. I'm really glad Jim Parsons was able to come back and relive his role, and having both young and old Sheldon in an episode was actually really interesting. And the most interesting part about this is the fact that the reason why old Sheldon was the narrator for the entirety of Young Sheldon was that's because Young Sheldon was a memoir of Sheldon. Sheldons that he was writing, which was really cool as we see Amy read through a portion of it and showing that Sheldon's view may be a little skewed. But it seems all of this came from the heart, and I'm really happy that this show got the conclusive end that it deserved. I could go on and on about Young Sheldon and how great the actors were for the choices of the cast. I could go on and on about how the character development was great and how the story was really relatable and how I really appreciated each story and the build-up of each character within their own story, even the side characters. One final detail I'd like to mention is that during the funeral scene, if you were paying close enough attention, you would notice that there's an elderly woman in the background of the full cast shot, and that is George, or the actor of George, dressed up to attend his own funeral. I just thought that was an interesting little fact to point out. But all in all, I thought it was a great show, and I'm looking forward to see what else Jim Parsons has in store for us. Anyways, that's all I have about Young Sheldon wrapping up its final season, and now it is time to send it back to my friends to end this week's episode.
But that's it from us. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you are watching on CJSW, don't forget to check out the other channels that they got up there on the website and listen in on the radio too. But I would like to thank other people bringing in topics today. Thank you, Tran.
Of course, anytime.
And thank you, Subset. Hey, you!
Damn, he was yawning.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry.
You're good.
Sleeping on the job.
Want to hit that one more time for me? Hey, yo! And we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, yo!